So this is episode 1 of bringing a horse back into shape. We are here with Isaac. Isaac has had about, two years off ish, maybe a little bit more. When I was pregnant with my son, I rode him for most of my pregnancy, but then when I had to just stop riding, he just kind of was off. He had a little bit of time with some lessons, but nothing super consistent. So he has pretty much had a bunch of time off. He is very out of shape. And so what we're going to start doing is bringing him back into shape, and I'm going to document it all. So first things first, what we want to look at is conformation. When we're looking at conformation, what we want to look at is kind of his overall body score. And right now, his overall body score, I'm not going to get into specifics of like what it would be, but I would say he's a little overweight and he's a lot under muscled. So you can see right here, he has always been quite a large horse. So he will always have a pretty deep, big barrel. Okay. However, you can tell, like, especially when you kind of come along here underneath his belly, it's a little bit like rounded. Whereas when he's in shape, it's going to be a little bit more of a straighter line through here. And obviously his core is completely out of shape because he has been doing nothing except being out in a pasture. We did turn him out into a pasture about 2 months ago, so he is getting a lot of walking time. And our pasture actually has a pretty decent hill, like half of it is on a hill. So it does give a lot of work toward the hind end, and allow them to kind of physically work their bodies a lot more than being in a stall and then being turned out into a fairly flat turnout. So he is getting some hind end work, but not a lot. And honestly, he sits in the shelter and eats hay 90% of the day. So he has no core to speak of. When we look at his top line here, he is pretty flat across his back. Like, it's not super angular like a thoroughbred would be under muscled. He just naturally is built pretty like flat across his back, but we can see there's quite a dip through here. And then his withers are quite protruding. Again, his normal conformation, he's built quite uphill and quite high through here. So this is always pretty angular. However, this right here, this dip should be muscled up, and it's not. When we look at his neck and we look at the top, like his crest here, he is crusty. He's always been a little bit crusty. We have always kind of thought that maybe he was gelded late, so he kind of has that stallion-y type neck. However, he also got really, really crusty about a year ago, and we were kind of worried about some metabolic things, so we did a big diet change for him. He's actually on very, very little grain. He's mostly on alfalfa, and the grain he is on is low starch, low sugar formula. So we're taking a lot of those sugars and starches and stuff out of his diet because we don't want to go toward a like Cushing's type disease. So he is a little bit crusty. It has come down, but again, when he's out of work, he's going to be a little bit crusty because he is a little bit overweight too. The dip, it's hard to see with his mane, but you can see there's quite a dip right here. That is just lack of top line. So what we should be looking at when he has his neck kind of down like this is there should be a nice smooth curve where it kind of crests, or the crest kind of lifts up a little bit here, and then it just smoothly goes down. And you can see there's a huge gap between, that's not helpful. There's a huge gap right here. If I put my hand here, there's a huge gap between the withers and part of his top line. So as we move to the haunch, what we're going to see is you have a pretty sharp angle from the hip to the point of their buttock to his stifle, and then back up to the hip. While you always have that triangle, it should appear that like around the triangle through the loin, through the croup, and then down through the hamstring and everything, it should just be round. And his kind of looks like all of it's a bit of a triangle. So So that is just a lack of muscling in the hindquarters. So you can see that he has a fairly poor muscle condition. And then he also needs to lose a little bit of weight. Like I said, he has always been a pretty thick horse. So he's not really one that's going to end up being really refined. He's kind of a big boy. So, but those are the things that we are looking to change a little. Those are the things we're looking to muscle up to create a little bit better of a physical, shape. So how do we do that? Okay, so when we're looking at what the plan is for Issac to get him back into physical shape, into peak physical shape, is we're going to start looking at what is going to put his body in enough stress that it will start building muscle and losing weight. Don't bite me. That'd be rude. But what will also keep him really happy and sound in his body as well, because we don't want to just put his body under a ton of stress. If we put his body under a ton of stress, he will get sore, he will stop enjoying the work, and then that stress in his body won't be beneficial. It will kind of work against us. So we're going to look at multiple things. We're going to look at his diet to make sure that when we start working him and he starts to expend some calories and expend some physical effort, we're not going to exceed our input. We always want our output to be less than our input, especially when we are starting to build muscle. If we are just looking to lose weight, then we can kind of put them on a little bit of a deficit. But with horses, we don't really want to put them on too much of a deficit, because horses tend to lose weight fast and other health issues arise really quickly. So we are going to look at his diet. I'm not looking at changing his diet quite yet. I'm going to put a couple weeks of light lunging on him first, just to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit. And then if, as I notice, that weight starts to come off, we'll start adding in some more on his diet. Now, right now, he is living out in the pasture. He has 24/7 access to a round bale. And then he also gets fed twice a day. And then he also has some grazing. There's not a lot of grazing right now because there's 3 horses on one pasture, and we just don't have a lot of great grass in this area. So he is getting hay 24/7. He gets alfalfa with both of his soaked alfalfa with both of his grain feedings. And so I'm not really worried about the input output at this point in time. However, when I start to ride him, that's when I'm going to start looking at that diet a little bit more, and maybe up some of the things in his diet. But right now, physical exercise wise, what we're looking at is just some light lunging. I will take you through kind of my thought process on how much lunging, what we want to do, and then and take you guys along with me for the whole ride. So let's get to the lunging. Okay, so Issac is a fairly gentlemanly lunger. It's not really one that is too naughty, which is appreciated. He's actually one of my most trained lunging horses. He's very well trained to voice cues. He likes to just stay out on a circle. He loves to pick up the canter and come down. He's just a really good listener, which is quite nice, actually. Now, one of the things that we want to be careful with is, because he has such a phenomenal work ethic, is that I don't want to work him too hard, because he will work himself to excess if I don't stop him. So as for equipment today, I'm just going for a very basic setup. I just have my lunge whip, my lunge line, and I have just him in his regular flat halter. As he gets into a little bit better shape, I will switch him over to a bridle, and then we will also start rigging him up in like a surcingle. He really likes the Pessoa lunging system. Sometimes I just put him in a butt rope and let him stretch his own. He's quite natural to a stretch of a lunge, so I don't really worry about having to encourage him into any position. He kind of does it on his own. However, I have found that putting him in the Pessoa lunging system, it just kind of helps him be a little bit more refined in his positioning. But as of right now, if I were to put him in the Pessoa system, as out of shape as he is, I could really risk him either injuring himself because his muscles aren't like there. I could overtax his body and potentially cause like a muscle strain or some other kind of injury. And also, he just doesn't have the muscle to do it, so it would make him very sore if I were to do it. So what we're looking at right now is just a move your body approach. We're going to do short lunges, just enough to get his cardio up and to start moving that body and start getting those joints to kind of be working in an exercise sense, not just a walking around the pasture sense. So I'm going to send him out. Now, occasionally, when I'm lunging a horse that is a little bit out of shape, I kind of let them do their own thing, and I don't really like tell them what to do all the time. I don't micromanage, so I'll just kind of be like, have them walk for a little bit, and then I'll have them do some trot for a little bit. I'll canter, I'll change direction, do walk, trot, canter the other way. For this particular horse, he wants to have a little bit more, he wants to be managed a little bit more. He's happy to just like walk and trot around, but for the most part, we're walk warming up, it's not a trot time. Ooh. For the most part, if it's a lovely view. So for the most part, if I leave him up to his own devices, he kind of he comes up with fun games, and we don't really want that, especially when we're trying to get back into shape. I don't want him to come up with his own games and then potentially cause something like an injury. So what we're going to do is we are going to give him kind of his own little games to work with. So I like to do, I make some kind of pattern up. So I'll do like one full circle at the trot, half a circle at the canter, one full circle at the trot, quarter circle at the walk, and then just kind of repeat it. And I don't want to do it for very long because, again, he's so out of shape. But it just kind of keeps his brain working to where I don't have to, he doesn't come up with his own games. So he says he's ready to trot, though. So we're just going to let him kind of, jaunt around a little bit. You can see what I mean by how much he likes to stretch. He likes to drag his nose in the ground and do this little jog for the first part of the session. I kind of let him pick his own warm-up. I know I said I don't really like to leave him up to his own devices very much, but it's a carefully watched, allowing him to pick his warm-up, which kind of he will trot when he's ready, and he kind of does this, like this is very normal for him. He just kind of jogs along, lets his body warm up. Sometimes I will let him walk more, or I'll make him walk more. It just kind of depends on the day, but he's also out in the pasture walking, so I'm not too worried about him walking for a long period of time, just because I know that he wasn't standing in a stall for multiple hours. He's been out in the pasture walking and kind of warming himself up. One of the things that I am looking for on him is I want to make sure that he's moving kind of freely and fluidly. This horse has always been a little bit of a stiff horse warming up. He doesn't like come out of the stall like a fresh 2-year-old. He always has come out like a little bit like a 17-year-old. And we've kind of checked all of the boxes vet-wise and everything. He just is a little bit, rolls out of bed a little bit stiff in the mornings. It's one of the reasons why I really like him being out in the pasture, is because he gets a lot of movement, so he's less stiff. So the warm-ups are a little bit less intensive for him. He just starts out a little bit better. So now that he's kind of starting to lift his head, he's starting to look around. He's still stretching a lot, but he's starting to lift his head and look around. That kind of tells me that he's starting to be ready for work. He's starting to loosen his body up. And so all I'm going to do is just kind of send him a little forward and ask him to move his body a little bit more and a little bit more of a stretch. Now, like I said, he is very voice cued. So if I want him to do a little bit more, I just tell him to go on. And he, not exactly what I meant, but he understood the assignment. He went a little bit forward, even if it meant he was going to canter. Go on. Easy. Oh, okay. Sometimes in the warm-up, you just kind of have to let them dictate just a little bit. So I'm going to send them a little bit more in the canter. Kind of let them move a little bit. Let those muscles just kind of really warm up. And trot. Oh, oh. You can see how much more freer that trot already is after he cantered. All my horses are trained to do the trot or cluck to trot and kiss to canter. So he's also trained that way. And that is really, really helpful when you want them to kind of go on, but you don't like, you want them to expand the trot or extend the trot. But you don't want them to step to the canter. And trot. Oh. So if I kind of go on, he sends a little bit forward, but if I go, he steps to the canter. So like I said, he is one of my best ones on the voice commands. He is quite phenomenal. He makes lunging really fun and easy. So we're just going to go ahead and switch directions on him and walk. Oh, hey, oh. The only thing about this horse that he does not like to do is he is not a huge fan of the walking. When I first got him, he was trained very classic, like the hunter jumper horses of the US, and he was lunged a lot. He was a bit of a problem child. He was lunged a lot, and he knew exactly what to do on the lunge. And it took me like months to get him to be able to walk on the lunge, especially on cue. He just couldn't do it. He could not fathom that he could walk on a lunge line. It was all trot and canter. And now that he walks, it's a much nicer lunge. It's much easier. I try not to lunge like the typical hunter jumper industry. I say that I love the hunter jumper industry. It's kind of where my heart lies, but I dislike a lot of the training practices, including lunging. I love lunging for an exercise-based purpose, or I like it for a training purpose, but I don't like it for a wear them out until they don't want to be hot anymore purpose. So I try to lunge with a little bit more purpose than that. So he's moving quite nicely now. We're going to go ahead and step up to the canter. I'm going to move him forward a little bit. He tends to be a little backed off in the canter, especially on the lunge. So I do always kind of have to send him forward. You can tell he's just, you can see he's overweight. He's just definitely not floating across the ground like he normally does. So he's a little bit better than when before we moved him out to the pasture. He was definitely getting too overweight, living in a stall and then going into a small turnout. So he's definitely better than he was, but he typically really floats across the ground, and he's just not doing that. But that's okay, it will come. And trot. You can tell how much he loves to canter. That's all he wants to do. Okay, so now that he's nice and warmed up, what I want to do is I want to kind of start getting his brain to kind of function. And then through that, what we're going to achieve is that as he goes through transitions, he will start loading his hind end a little bit more and start activating some of those hind end muscles, which will also activate those core muscles. So one thing that I do a lot with him is to shorten and lengthen the stride. So we're going to go ahead and just ask for a couple little shortenings. So we're going to say easy, 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 and then send him on. I say go 1. Good. And with him, you'll notice the first couple ones are not really great, and then they get better and better as we go. So easy, 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 and go on. And what we're, oh, and trot, oh, good. So what we're looking for with that easy, is that he's taking shorter strides, but he kind of gets that up-down look, where he's not stepping out so far, and he's starting to kind of, not tiptoe, but kind of that idea, that high knees idea. Easy, easy, like that. And then we say go on, easy, go on. So sometimes I have to pair that go on with an easy because he wants to canter so bad. Go on. Good. And we're gonna do one more this direction. Easy, easy, good, and go on. Go on, good. And then we're gonna ask him to walk and hold. So I know this is the matter of moments for you, but for me, this is like 4 weeks later, because I have tried to film this segment of this episode 4 times. One time was the original filming, and my camera fritzed and went spinning up to the sky. So my voice is there, but the film is of clouds. The second time I filmed it successfully, but I deleted it off of my SD card, which if you've ever deleted anything off of an SD card, it's very difficult to get it back. I tried and I failed. So, and then the third time, it was, you know, something like the day, the filming, it just didn't happen. So now, now I am here on the 4th refilm. I'm hoping, 1, I don't delete this, and 2, it works out and my camera like functions correctly. So because this is 4 weeks later, Isaac is a little bit more in shape than the very first time you've seen him, which was moments ago. So if he looks a little different, that's because, well, it's 4 weeks later and he is in better shape. However, I really wanted you guys to see this exercise because it's just a really handy exercise. He loves it. But it's just a really good exercise, and I thought it would be really beneficial too for you guys to see it instead of just hearing my voice on it. So just to recap, although we probably don't need to, he is going to walk a quarter circle, trot a half circle, canter a full circle, and then you're going to kind of go back down the ladder. So after you canter that full circle, you're going to trot a half circle, walk a quarter, and it starts all over again. So I don't want you to get caught up on if the walk is more than a quarter of a circle or the trot is more than a half. You can adjust this however works for you. If your horse does not have a great walk cue, then just do whatever works for your horse. Like if you need to walk a half circle or you need to or trot another half circle before they walk, it's totally fine. It's no big deal. So Isaac, in the very first time I filmed it, the walk cue was really bad. It took him like almost a full circle of trotting after I asked him to walk to actually walk. Today he seems to be unwilling to walk again. I've already warmed up and everything, so that's how I kind of know that. But we will see what happens. So don't be surprised if I'm saying whoa a lot. It's again not a big deal. It's not like there's a rule or something I have to follow. It's just the guidelines. So we're going to start our quarter of a circle here at the wall, and then we're going to trot on center line. You want to give your cues a little bit early, whether you're going for an upward or a downward transition. So here we go. Trot. Now Isaac, I'm going to have to start a little earlier on the downward transitions because that's where he kind of is a little bit weaker. Cancer. Weaker in listening skills. Upward transitions he's got. So I'm going to start a whole quarter of the circle early and trot. And there he is like, I got it. So I'm going to go on my original thing. And so, and walk, pull, 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 get out. So his big thing is when he doesn't want to walk, he just comes in the circle. For video purposes, I'm just going to work with it. If I was just working him without the camera, I would probably work on this a little bit more, but I don't want to waste the whole session on working on that specific thing. So we're going to start walking, or start trying here. I tend to make him walk because he kind of sucks at it. So he doesn't suck at the walk. He sucks at the cue. Canter. So there's our full circle. And trot. Oh, good boy. Half circle here. Start early and walk. Oh, oh, oh. We're a Western pleasure horse today. Oh, good boy. Starting your quarter of a circle now. Picking up our trot. Canter. Boy. And trot. Oh, good boy. Half circle trot. And walk. Oh, 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 out. Go away. So that's pretty good for him, to be honest. Doing that that time of getting that walk. For this particular horse, I'm not that concerned about it. I've already talked about how he had a really hard time learning how to walk on the lunge, so I'm just not concerned about him not walking right on cue. It's just not very important for what he does. I'd rather spend my time training some other things. His upward and downward transitions out of the trot and the canter are excellent most of the time. If they were all really bad, I'd spend more time working on it. And honestly, he gets pretty good eventually. It's just getting back into work. He tends to be a little bit rusty on that. Okay, so you want to do that exercise about, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. You can do it as little or as much as you really want. I wouldn't go more than 4 times in the beginning when you're just starting getting that horse to be in shape. So like right now, him being a month later of work, he could probably do more. But as long as the transitions are good, as long as the pace is good, as long as he looks in balance, I'm not necessarily wanting him to do a ton of work. It's more about quality over quantity, especially because he really is only like a month in. So it's not really important for him to have an excessive amount of stamina at this point. So we're just mainly looking for that quality gaits, quality transitions, and then as his fitness improves, we will increase the level or the intensity of the training. All right, so what we do one way, we always do the other way. He doesn't necessarily have a strong and weak side at the moment. When I'm riding him, I do feel like he's a little bit weaker track left, but it's mainly like at the canter I notice it. But he's always been fairly even, which is really nice to have. You don't get that very often. But he's always been very even, and especially when you were coming back into work, if you work both sides really consistently and diligently, you will find that your horse comes back more even than maybe when you first got them, and because both sides are already weak. So if you really be careful to work both sides equally, or even put a little extra time on that previously weak side, your horse is going to come back a lot more even, which is a much easier thing to work with. All right, so quarter of the circle starting now. I'm going to be a little bit more on the cue here, you're at, or on the like point, because I know that he's listening pretty good, especially for those upward transitions. So asking now, canter. And trot, pull, good. I am gonna ask early here. And walk, pull, pull. You'll notice I'm kind of like waving the line a little bit or tugging on it out. It's just kind of like a half halt. It's kind of crude because you're just hooked to the bottom of the halter. Out, quarter circle walk. It's not a sharp tug. It's just kind of like a, hey, listen up, like a half halt. Strut. Good. And trot, pull. And walk, pull, pull, pull. Quarter circle lay is really not too bad for this horse. Quarter circle there. You're up. Good. And trot, pull, go away. And walk, pull. We're going to end the exercise with that because that was his most excellent walk of the day, or listening wise. Like I said, it gets better over time and just with repetition. So that is that exercise. Again, you can make it however you want. This particular horse likes the pattern, likes kind of the repetition for a short amount of time. It also, having things that happen quickly, it works better for him. He likes to keep his brain on things. I have to be really careful that when like we're jumping courses, we don't do like kind of huntery courses where you have a lot of canter time in between the fences, because that's where he really gets playful. He really likes that jumper, like super short turns, things changing quickly type of thing. So he really enjoys the more intense thinking exercises than the just falling asleep as you're cantering around. So that's what works for this horse. But some horses need that little extra time. So doing a full circle of trot and a full circle of canter and then a half circle of walk, or even like 2 circles of walk, especially if you have a really like overweight horse that needs a lot of walking time and very short amounts of trot and canter time. Doing more at the walk and then just touching in the trot and the canter. You'll also find that if you have a horse that is not super naturally balanced, so Issac, he's very well trained, and he was doing much more advanced stuff. So his canter has one, I think he was very blessed with a very naturally balanced canter, like coming out of the womb. And then he has retained that just through his training and so on. So for him, doing canter work is easy. But I've had horses that could barely hold a canter in the beginnings of conditioning work. They could barely hold a canter for a quarter of a circle or even like a stride. My suggestion there would be to not canter. Just keep walk trotting and then sprinkle in the canter every 2 or 3 lunge sessions and just let that canter kind of naturally build up. I am a big believer that a horse that can't canter on the lunge is going to have a whole lot of trouble cantering under saddle when they have an extra weight on their back. So I like to let them kind of figure out that balance, figure out that strength on the lunge first, and then after that we kind of throw in the canter under saddle. Now there are exceptions to that. I've also had horses that are just horrible to canter on a lunge, just cannot figure it out. And being under saddle and having little straighter ways like down the long sides, it is helpful to them. So everything is on a horse by horse basis. So even if I say something here, don't treat it as you know, the be all end all. I still have a lot to learn too. Um, and I'm learning every day. And what works for my horses might not work for your horses. But my purpose here, my point, is that I want to just give people the tools in their toolbox to be able to take different options, different things to their horses and see what does work. So that being said, if you try this and you're like, look, this just really didn't work for my horse, do you have another method or do you have another technique? Just throw that in the comments and I will do my best to address that. Whether that's just like we can privately message back and forth, or I can do a specific video on that particular subject. I'm always here to help, and I'm the first person to say that horses, they take different techniques. I have had some that take every tool in the toolbox and then I have to craft a new tool. I have had some that just do the first thing I pick. I kind of try to have a solution for like 2 or 3 solutions to the same problem, because you just have to have that variety and you have to have those options. So all right, so that was that exercise, both directions. Again, you can change it up. You can completely do it completely separate. The important thing that we're looking at is we're paying attention to our horse. We're paying attention to how their nostrils are flaring. Are they huffing and puffing with the rib cage, with their breathing? Are they physically looking tired? Pay attention to those to kind of know how much you can push your horse. For this episode, we're looking at the first 2 or 3 lunges, fitness wise. And then after a couple weeks, you can, or after even a week, you can kind of increase that stamina or that intensity. So you're looking at staying pretty light, but watching your horse. Maybe your horse is not as out of shape as this horse was. And maybe you can do a little bit more. Or maybe your horse hasn't been worked in 5 years and they're incredibly out of shape. They are incredibly overweight or underweight. I will say, if your horse is underweight, address that piece first, because you want to make sure that the work you're doing is not taking away from their body condition, unless it's like an overweight horse and you're trying to lose weight. But an underweight horse, you want to try to do incredibly low intensity work, like walking, slowly building some of those muscles up. But you are wanting to pour groceries into them and get that weight up first. As for like the cool down, what you can do is you can pretty easily, your horse is good at it, you can get kind of close to them and you can start walking with them and give them some straightaways. That way they're not just on a circle constantly. Now, I'm trying to stay within the frame of the camera right now. Typically when I do this, what I do is I go along the long sides of the arena and really give them that kind of long walking in a straight line and just let their systems come back to normal. Yeah, that is episode 1 of bringing a horse back into shape. We will progress. We're going to do a couple of weeks of lunging, progressing to having like a surcingle on, and having some of the rigging involved. We'll progress to poles on the ground. Probably at the end of 2 weeks, we might even like let him play over a few jumps. That'll be fun to video for you guys to see. And then we'll progress to riding. So he can be pretty naughty over fences, especially in the beginning. So that'll be kind of fun for everybody to watch. I'm going to try not to get bucked off into the ground, or he'll behave perfectly and he'll be, really nice to me. We'll see. But I hope you enjoyed watching. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments. If you have any questions, if you have any ideas of what videos you want to see, I am always open to more ideas. We're going to be videoing a lot in the next couple of months, as I have some really fun things in the works. So yeah, just put your comments in the comments, and I'll try to get to everybody. So I hope you enjoyed. See you next time.